The Tianqi Sect led 7 sects to unify the world's Taoism, excessively expelling those who did not obey, leading to the full resistance of exiles in dire straits. At the same time, the demon cult secretly supported exiles in order to disrupt the righteous path. The female protagonist Yu Tianqing was reborn in the Dao Zhenzong in pursuit of the supreme Dao intention. She carried the secret treasure, Jade Bone Relic, and became a righteous, exiled, and sought after object of the demonic cult. She was originally fighting alongside the divine descendant Baiyun Shen, but under the scheme of the young master of the Tianqi Sect, Wuwuhua, Baiyun Shen stole the secret treasure, Jade Bone Relic, and the two parted ways thereafter. After this series of upheavals, Yu Tianqing finally comprehended the supreme Dao, inherited the ancient divine light, and identified the conspirators behind the series of disturbances, and fought against this ultimate boss at the peak. Keywords of the novel. Tianqing Liuguang No Pop-ups, Tianqing Liuguang TXT Complete Collection Download, Tianqing Liuguang Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Wedge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. The True School of the Primordial Dao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The True School of the Primordial Dao. The cool breeze is gentle, and the wild grass is lush. The dilapidated mountain gate is mottled and colorless, and even the golden plaque is crooked in the wasteland of grass and stones. But the 3 characters, Dao Zhenzong, can be vaguely seen. 1,000 years ago, the founder of the Taoist sect, Dao Zhenzong, achieved great success with his unparalleled and exquisite Taoist intentions, soaring in the daytime. He can be said to be the first person in the history of the Taoist sect. Afterwards, the Taoist sect founded by him led the Taoist sect for over 1,000 years, and was actually the leader of all Taoist sects in the world. The achievements of our ancestors are dazzling, and today our ancestral home is in a state of decline and ruin. If Dao Zhenzong comes again, I wonder if he will sigh. The setting sun sets in the west, and the sunset covers the sky. At this moment, a figure stood quietly in front of the mountain gate, with Renhongxia draped over her body and bathed in golden light. Her long hair fluttered, her snowy complexion and jade skin truly added a touch of color to this gray world. Yu Tianqing clearly did not have such self-awareness, otherwise she would not have frowned tightly, her gaze indifferent, and after scanning the withered wood plaque next to her, she quickly walked in. 180 layers of jade steps, even though the weeds are rampant, the past style can still be seen. Yu Tianqing climbed up the stairs, with countless bone-piercing sword marks on the broken walls and ruins, which were shocking and showed that the original questioner's Dao heart was strong. Just like her current mood. In pursuit of the supreme Dharma, she spared no expense in burying herself in the sea of clouds, just in exchange for an opportunity to break through the Tao's will. Dao Zhenzong, the first person in the history of cultivation, was her choice. With firm feet, there is no doubt about the pace. The sunset has stretched out her figure, as well as many shadows that should not belong here. More than 10 burly men crowded in the inner courtyard, each holding knives and axes, facing the elderly and young in the middle, with a genuine intent of devouring and cutting. Unexpectedly, this group of people, old and young, did not pay any attention to these many fierce people. On the contrary, they chewed sweet potatoes with relish, looking satisfied. "Hey, old man, where is the thing? If you hand it over, the master will spare your life today," the man in charge said fiercely. The old man's beard had turned white, and he took a bite of the sweet potato in his hand. With the other hand, he went to get the sweet potato in the young man's arms. The young man was extremely unwilling and sat down on the side, holding the remaining sweet potato in his arms. The old man with white beard scolded, "It's like a mouse drilling into an oil pot, I can't get in or out. The cold water scalds the chicken, and that's it for each other," said the young man with a bad temper. "You little bunny, you're going to bully your master and destroy your ancestors," said the old man with white beard. He jumped up and chased the young man around the yard, completely ignoring everyone. The villains looked at each other, they were all famous bullies in this area. How could they be underestimated like this? It's really unbearable, who can't bear it? The leader shouted loudly, "Hey, old man, I'm asking you a question." A large knife lay horizontally in front of the old man, forcing him to stop. The old man couldn't dodge and couldn't help but say, "Haven't you grown your own eyes? You've come around 800 times a day inside and outside this house, and haven't found enough yet." The big man grabbed the old man's chest and said, "If I can find it, why bother asking you?" The old man used his greasy hand and pulled off the other person's hand in disgust. "Are you blinded by lard? If I had something in your mouth, I could still make you flip it around 800 times a day." That wicked Han was stuttering with words. The young man chuckled and clapped his hands as if he had heard some terrible joke. "What a great square hammer, stupid." The big man was ridiculed in public and naturally became furious. He picked up his 7-foot-3-inch large axe and was about to chop it towards the young man. The old man shook his head, as if it was commonplace. He sighed and walked to the wall of the nave, then sat down on the ground, howling and crying loudly. "Grandmaster, have you seen this? They are bullying your disciples and grandchildren like this. The old man, I am no longer alive. When will your old man come to take me to Yongdang blissful land?" The young man heard the old man cry and immediately began to cry. The two of them sang together, with high and low tones, in an orderly and rhythmic manner. The big men were also very impatient when they saw this, and they all put away their knives and strode away. The young man didn't cry but laughed when he saw them walking clean. He stretched lazily and took out a money bag from his pocket. He smiled proudly at the old man and said, "Master, why don't we drink a pound of wine tonight?" The old man pretended to wipe away the tears on his face and said, Go fight and serve wine to my grandfather." The young man followed suit, while the old man leaned against the wall and took a nap. Yu Tianqing stepped into the courtyard with withered leaves, the red paint had already fallen out of color, and his family was surrounded by walls, which can be described as realistic. She walked straight towards the old man, and behind the wall of the central hall, it turned out to be a stone statue of her ancestor, with a casual long collar and an immortal spirit. The stone statue clearly has a certain charm, with distinct eyes, clear facial features, and a hint of detachment and compassion that can see through the world. As she remembered, "Dao Zhenzong, I'm here. It's like talking to oneself, and it's like chatting." The old man in the corner instantly opened his eyes, his gaze bright and devoid of the previous turbidity. At this moment, a painful cry accompanied half of the door falling, stirring up withered leaves and a chilling aura that instantly filled the entire courtyard. "Master, master." The young man crawled towards the old man. "Who's here again? Annoying. Annoying." The old man's tone was also convoluted, and even the expression on his face instantly became shocked. Purple Star Gate. At this moment, a group of people standing in the courtyard were all dressed in purple clothes, with a top-notch black silk tied around their waist. The sun shone with a faint black gold color, exuding a seductive yet steady demeanor. Unlike those bullies just now, they are well-trained, have a calm gaze, and the young master led by them has a strong and noble temperament. "Who is Dayakenzi?" shouted a person in purple. The old man dared not playfully smile and helped the young man up. He took a step forward and said, "Little old man, that's right." The purple-clothed young master looked at him contemptuously and smiled. "The Taoism sect has really exhausted its climate. Even beggars can become masters now." "What are you saying?" the young man said angrily. But he was stopped by the old man. The old man looked serious and arched his hand, saying, "I have no achievements in the old way, so I am not worthy." He also said, "I don't know why the heroes of the Purple Star sect came here today." The purple-clothed man beside him said, "This is my young master, the young master of the autumn sunset." The old man hurriedly said, "Autumn young master, I'm here to pay my respects." Qiu Luoying had a haughty expression and didn't take Dao Zhenzong seriously. I came today just for one thing. If you understand, please hand it over quickly. I don't know what Qiu Shaozhu is asking for. Don't pretend to be foolish, Autumn Falling English sneered. Dao Zhenzong shook his head and said, if Master Qiu doesn't explain it, how did I know? What you're saying is also true. It doesn't make much sense to hide and tuck away. Autumn Falling Ing looked at Dao Zhenzong and said word by word, Jade Bone Relic. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. One Sword Returns the Purple Star. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. One Sword Returns the Purple Star. According to legend, when the Taoist emperor ascended in the daytime, his rainbow light transformed and his physical body was automatically cremated, condensing into a relic called the Jade Bone Relic, which was worshipped by his disciples for generations. It is even more rumored that this Jade Bone Relic contains the supreme Dao intention and cultivation of the Dao Zhenzong, and is the treasure of the Dao Sect. Dao Xuanzi sighed and said, it's not because the little old man has hidden something. I have never seen this Jade Bone Relic before. The autumn falling petals seemed to smile rather than smile, but there was hidden darkness in their eyes. Guess I believe it or not. Dao Xuanzi gave a bitter smile and said, after the decline of my sect, there have been various cultivators constantly inquiring about the whereabouts of the Jade Bone Relic. Not only do I know, but even my master and ancestor do not know. If there really is a relic, why is our sect so weak? Qiu Luoying said, it sounds like there is some truth to it. Dao Xuanzi said again, recently, there have been more and more cultivators exploring our Dao Zhenzong, and they have been more and more diligent. Even if they do exist, they should have been searched long ago. Take a look at the little old man here. Dao Xuanzi pointed to the empty surroundings and said, poor as a wash, it's just an empty courtyard. Before Qiu Luoying arrived, she had already inquired thoroughly and knew that Xuanzi's words were not false. The Taoist sect may have been extremely strong for a while, but now it has fallen this morning. If it weren't for the so-called Jade Bone Relics, no one would have remembered the Taoist sect. Moreover, in his heart, he had no belief in the true existence of sacrifice. As Dao Xuanzi said, if there really is, how could it possibly fail to achieve the scene before us? However, he inspired many people, and how could he return empty-handed? However, in the blink of an eye, many planning ideas had already flashed through his heart. Even so, how can I believe it? To be honest, little old man, there really isn't. That's not possible. Qiu Luoying shook her head. I've said it all, what else do you want? Is it all over? The young man blurted out impatiently. The river breeze. Dao Xian couldn't cover it up in time, only to see a figure flash by. The young man was kicked out by someone who treated him like a chest kick. Several purple-clad men approached and trapped them. Dao Xuanzi was eager to be a disciple and flew to save him, but he was also trapped. Qiu Luoying brushed off the dust on her body, gave a cold smile, and shouted, the disciples of Daojian sect refuse to cooperate and hide their relics. Take all their clothes off, check them carefully, and don't let any of them go. Yes, young master. The subordinates were clear in their hearts and laughed wickedly for a moment. Dao Xuanzi knew that the other party intended to humiliate him, but he was helpless and sorrowful. He could only hold on to his only disciple tightly, but they were all weak, and how could they be opponents of more than a dozen cultivators? Sigh for the rise of the world, not to see bullying the weak. With a sound of prosperity, it seems like a piece of brocade. I don't know if there are bones of injustice along the way. With just a long chant, a long sword hung in the air, its body shimmering with a faint blue light, its sword intent blazing, and it stood majestically. Everyone was shocked and immediately retreated. Who cares about my Purple Star sect affairs? Yu Tianqing walked out from behind the wall, with a graceful figure. Qiu Luoying saw that she was only a young girl in her 20s, but she didn't take it seriously in her heart. Seeing her hibiscus jade face again, she couldn't help but tease and say, "Girl, you're too boring to be alone. Do you want to play and have fun with us like them?" The young master of the Tang dynasty is like a street thug in his mocking words. Even if it was unbearable, the subordinates were very enthusiastic and laughed at Yu Tianqing. Yu Jin's green face remained unchanged, as if he had never heard of it. Walk straight towards the two of them, old and young, stand at will and block in front of them. Her voice was light, yet it was resounding. A scholar can be killed, not humiliated. In an instant, the long sword spun towards her chest, with constant chanting and a solemn aura descending. Autumn falling petals dare not be underestimated. But how could he be overshadowed by a woman, as a prominent young sect leader? Suddenly, he stood up and launched a frontal attack. The soft sword in the waist instantly resembled a wandering dragon going out to sea. He was bursting with energy and was about to hit with a single blow. Yu Tianqing did not shy away and pointed to the sword technique. The sword light suddenly shone, just like the clouds breaking through the sky. The true energy is surging and shaking the 8 extremes. The sword light dissipated, and withered leaves slowly fell from the sky. Yu Tianqing held a long sword in his hand, but the tripod stood still. Across from her, the man in purple had already fallen to the ground, unconscious. The members of the Purple Star sect were all shocked. They lifted the autumn falling leaves and hurriedly left. When all the members of the Purple Star sect dispersed, Yu Tianqing couldn't hold on in an instant, and his eyes turned black and he fainted. In the mist, she asked with a simple heart, bowing to the glazed tree. She was full of anticipation for the splendid palace, the magnificent buildings, and the Jade Palace. However, it was empty and empty, like a mirror sky and water moon, terrifying and suffocating. Suddenly, her heart was shaken and she couldn't control herself, awakened from a dream, covered in a cold sweat. Yu Tianqing instinctively searched for the close-fitting longsword, only to see it lying quietly by his side, with a slight sense of peace in his heart. The dream realm is actually the truth. She was originally a saint of the heavenly palace, but failed to inherit the ancient divine power of glass light. Afterwards, her Taoist teachings plummeted and she fell into the sea of clouds, losing her immortal roots. She was supposed to be in a state of despair, but unexpectedly, she had a chance to be reborn. However, she did not choose to return to the heavenly palace, but instead came to this place. The mortal world. Rebirth means being able to correct past mistakes and recreate a lost future, but for Yu Tianqing, it is different. For her, life is like flowing water, with only constant turbulence. Even if reborn, there is no need to start over. So, she gave up the immortal root and spiritual pulse to search for the Taoist ancestor. Dao Zhenzong. Even if the Dao realm retreats and loses, the Dao heart is strong, and can only move forward. The gradually rising sound outside interrupted Yu Tianqing's thoughts. "Oh my goodness, master, how could you still hide such a good treasure?" This was the voice of the young man Jiang Feng. "Tell me quickly, what good thing are you hiding behind my back?" Dao Xuanzi shouted, "Stinky kid, don't touch your manual feet, don't damage your beard. I'll cut your flesh if you miss one." "Oh." Jiang Feng said painfully, "Old man, are you sure? This is 1,000-year-old ginseng that is difficult to buy for 1,000 gold coins." Quick stew, lorries meow." Dao Xuanzi said, "That girl is very weak in qi. Before she came, she had a loss of qi. This old ginseng is exactly what she needs." Yu Tianqing's heart warmed up, but he didn't expect that this master and disciple were also kind-hearted. She got out of bed gently and was about to go out. In an instant, countless footsteps could be heard in my ears. Yu Tianqing suddenly felt a chill in his heart, only saying that the one who came was not kind. The courtyard illuminated by dozens of flames is as bright as daylight. One person exclaimed with luck, "Lan Yuman is here to visit." The master and disciple of Dao Xuanzi pushed out the door. Through the crack in the door, a blue figure appeared graceful, nodding slightly at Dao Xianzi. Young generation, Lan Loi, pay respects to the head of Daojian sect. Dao Xuanzi bowed back and said, Mr. Lan, you're welcome. Dao Xuanzi's tone was very solemn. Dao Zhenzong has been in decline for hundreds of years. Unexpectedly, today two major sects have emerged, which is truly brilliant. Lan Loi chuckled and said, Senior, it's important. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Breaking the Cultivation Realm of Dao Yi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Breaking the cultivation realm of Dao Yi. In the past century, 7 major sects have emerged in the cultivation world, namely orange, red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. The 7 sects are united and represent strength through color, and have been promoted in different territories. In recent years, with the strength of the sects, there has been a faint trend of each governing its own side. The location of the Daoist sect is within the influence range of the Purple Star sect. Today, the Purple Star sect suffered a setback. I thought there might be some entanglement, but unexpectedly, it was the Blue Jade sect, who came so quickly. The leader of the Blue Jade sect is an elegant and refined person who does not love worldly affairs. Therefore, all the affairs in the sect are entrusted to his adopted daughter, Lan Loi, for management. In other words, Lan Loi is the actual leader of the Blue Jade sect. Now that Lan Loi has arrived personally, Dao Xuanzi's mood at this moment can be said to be not heavy. Starry night arrives, I wonder what Master Lan intends to do. Lan Loi sighed and smiled, just like a narcissus under the moon. Senior, why bother asking questions clearly? It's naturally for the Jade Bone Relic. She has a beautiful face, a soft voice, and a slow pace of speech, but there is a hint of coldness between the lines, like an invisible sword pressing against someone else's neck. Although she is still young, her cultivation is far superior to that of autumn fallen leaves. Dao Xuanzi knew it was difficult to escape today, and he no longer had any final concerns in his heart. Are you not afraid of chilling the hearts of cultivators all over the world when you work so hard to force each other? Lan Loi smiled and said, that Jade Bone Relic is the most precious treasure of the Daoist sect. It is a treasure left by the Daoist ancestors to the Taoist priests of the world, not owned by your Daoist family. Now that the world has other responsibilities, you should hand over the relic and let those who are capable possess it, so that the world can return to you. I understand now, there are other experts behind the 7 schools. Senior, your wisdom is like a sea. Since you are an understanding person, please don't make things difficult for me, Senior. Dao Xuanzi gave a bitter smile and sighed, that Jade Bone Relic is just a rumor that is hollow in stature. Rumors can come from nowhere, but relics cannot be made out of nothing. Senior, do you really not think about the future of the world's Taoism? Dao Xuanzi shook his head and said, I'm really powerless. Sigh. Lan Loi sighed, I can't help you then. The sound falls and the palm rises. Blue Luo Yi is young in age, with a handful of rain flower palms. The palm wind is as gentle as a flower. At first, it is imperceptible, but suddenly it becomes cold and gloomy. When the other party perceives it, the strong wind is like rain, seeping into their internal organs like needles. Master. Jiang Feng's eyes were torn apart. Dao Xuanzi had already given up resisting, he closed his eyes and waited quietly for the palm strength to arrive. Palm to the face, abruptly stop. A millimeter is the distance between life and death. Her hands, as delicate as jade, could barely stop. Originally, at the last moment, Lan Loi regained her palm power. Jiang Feng rushed over and hugged Dao Xuanzi. The feeling of surviving the disaster made him unable to help but howl and cry. Dao Xuanzi patted his back and said with pity, Don't cry, don't cry. Senior, facing life and death with such magnanimity and composure, Lan Loi greatly admires it. If Mr. Lon has any other advice, let's just say it, there's no need to play around with me here. Lon Luoyi said, although the senior refused to hand over the Jade Bone Relic, cultivators have the virtue of good life, and I don't want to die. However, as I have traveled thousands of miles through the Blue Jade Gate, there must be an explanation. Dao Xuanzi said in a deep voice, what do you want? Dismantle. Dismantling. Dao Xuanzi was suddenly startled and pointed to Lon Luoyi, trembling all over. How dare you? Lon Luoyi smiled and said, Senior, I also consider your master and disciple. Only by dismantling every brick and tile of the Taoist sect can we prove what you said. That relics are just legends. Dao Xuanzi wept sorrowfully and said, here is the spiritual tower of our sect's ancestors throughout history. How could you be like this? Sigh. Lon Luoyi sighed, things change, and dead things are ultimately more precious than human life. What do you think? The implication is that if Dao Xuanzi wants to stop him, he will only die. What kind of jade bone relics do you openly ask for, but in fact, you are here to humiliate the Dao Zhenzong? Dao Xuanzi exclaimed indignantly, even if the Dao Zhenzong disappears, can you really unify the world's Dao forest? Can the Dao practitioners of the world sincerely accept it? Lon Luoyi sneered, what is sincerity? Isn't it that anyone with strong influence can become the master? She sneered, is sincerity worth the sword in our hands? The world is deteriorating, and people's hearts are not ancient. Dao Xuanzi sighed helplessly, stop, stop, stop. Whatever you want, do it. Seeing his decadent appearance, Lon Luoyi felt even more contemptuous in her heart. Cultivate the world, respect the strong, and this is the way of the world. Since the senior is already well versed, I have one more thing that requires the senior's cooperation. Dao Xuanzi remained silent. For him, the Taoist sect was everything in his life. Now that his sect is not secure and his ancestral spirit will turn into dust, he has no face to live in this world. However, he also has no face to see his ancestors again. At this moment, an unprecedented sense of loneliness strikes his heart. What is loneliness? It's not a lack of understanding, companionship, or emptiness without direction, but a desolation where heaven and earth have no place to hide, and the yin and yang realms have no foothold. Lon Luoyi sneered and said coldly, in the daytime, Autumn Falling Ying was knocked unconscious, but the body search was not over. Luoyi has apologized here. Please cooperate, senior, so that I can also give an explanation to the cultivators in the world. Dao Xuanzi's heart is like a withered tree, his face is like a plain silk, and he is completely indelible. Since that's the case, let's invite the three of you, said Lon Luoyi at this point, a glimmer of light suddenly shone in Dao Xuan's gray eyes. No way. Dao Xuanzi stood in front of the door, the girl in the room couldn't bear the humiliation of my master and disciple, so she took the initiative to fight with Qiu Xiaomen. We met by chance, and she is not a member of our Dao Zhenzong. Besides, she is a girl's family, how can she be searched? Aren't you doing this to ruin people's innocence? Lon Luoyi sternly said, isn't that Jade Bone Relic right on her? A sharp tongue and sharp sword make it difficult to distinguish. Since the arrival of the Blue Jade Gate, she has been staying inside to regulate her breath. However, her dantian is weak and has actually recovered for a while. Although she knows the danger outside, she cannot help but restrain her mind and recover quickly, hoping to have the strength to make a move. If you want to enter, step over the corpse of an old man, he shouted outside. Lon Luoyi sneered, toasting, not eating, and punishing. The palm wind rises again, and the mysterious power is pressing. This time, Dao Xuanzi will not be caught without restraint. He held his palms in his chest, accumulating strength, and in an instant, the wind and clouds rushed away, and the moonlight was unclear. Two palms meet, the earth shakes and the mountains shatter. After a palm strike, the wind and dust cleared away, and Dao Xuanzi stood proudly in front of the door, his eyes calm and motionless. Lan Lui was forced to take a few steps back. However, in just a few words, Dao Xuanzi's skill unexpectedly made a qualitative leap. Lan Lui's heart was filled with surprise. Breaking through the realm of Tao, congratulations to the leader. The words of Yu Tianqing came from afar. Just before, Lan Lui's words and actions made Dao Xuanzi's state of mind feel like heaven to hell, and then from hell to the human world. In just a few short breaths, it had already passed the cycle of reincarnation. And it was also this upheaval that allowed him to break free from decades of shackles. It turned out that the transition from cultivation of Taoism to the realization of Taoism was just a step towards the door. And this step towards the door is the true beginning of entering the holy realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Deep Clouds and Blue Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Deep Clouds and Blue Sky. The east is gradually turning white, and the sky is slightly brighter. When a ray of golden light pierced through the rolling clouds and landed on the gate of the Taoist sect, the Sanskrit sound spread throughout and the smoke dissipated. The mountain was wet and heavy, with thick hair and dew, and everyone had been in a standoff all night. Although Dao Xuanzi's cultivation has made some breakthroughs, his strength is relatively weak. In addition to the blue robe, there are also dozens of sect members, and even support from the Purple Star sect. Because of this, Lan Lui was confident and fearless. More than 10 members of the sect had already engaged in battle in turns, and the master and disciples of Dao Xuanzi were also exhausted. The Taoist ancestor once said, "All things are originally empty, but ultimately come back to dust." Master Dao, as a disciple of the Taoist ancestor, why should you persist? Blue Luo sighed and mocked. It is only natural to demolish someone else's ancestral home. There is no trace of guilt, but instead, they are blaming the other party for stubbornly holding on. She had taken over all the principles in the world by herself, and Dao Xuan's eyes were wide and angry, yet she was helpless. The essence of all things is emptiness. What is emptiness is our greedy heart, which ultimately returns to dust and our pure nature. To eliminate evil and preserve righteousness, to eliminate falsehood and preserve truth, is what our ancestors wanted us to persist in. Speak lightly. Meaning is heavy. The words of the wise move the heart and soul. Yu Tianqing walked out of the room. She exudes an air of freehand brushwork, stepping into the dust with a gentle step. The rising sun and mist poured down on her like a cage of blooming crabapple, unparalleled in charm. Lan Lui was somewhat surprised by the woman in front of her. Such a graceful demeanor and appearance were rare in her life. Yu Tianqing kneaded the formula with her bare hands, and her long sword instantly rose. Immediately, with a gentle lift of his hand, he calmly said, "Please." With such a posture and demeanor, Lan Lui's heart was not filled with flavor. She has not never seen a beautiful woman, nor has she never seen a refined person, but she is so naturally born that it seems to be enviable. Although the other party's face was pale and weak, their aura remained unchanged. Blue Luo lost her mouth, her true energy surged, her hands entwined like flowers, and rain-flower palm cascaded in. Swords and palms clashed, and the wind and clouds surged. Lan Lui became increasingly frightened during the Vietnam War. Despite using 100 moves, she could never get close to the opponent's side. The opponent's sword-wielding power was truly rare. Seeing the other party's increasingly white lips, Blue Luo chuckled inwardly. The other party is exhausted and unable to handle it, so why bother to fight and entangle with her? Suddenly, there was a coquettish cry, and the Blue Luo's palms merged into one, pouring down like a continuous drizzle. What is rain-flower palm? It is the palm energy like raindrops that can instantly bloom like a flower. The palm's strength burst, and the universe moved. Yu Tian's blue face remained unchanged, his sword on his chest transformed into countless sword shadows, like a dense sword net that tightly bound the opponent's palm strength. Blue Luo's palm wind was frozen, and she was both anxious and angry. She quickly activated all the true qi in her body, ready to crush the opponent with one palm. Two streams of true qi collided with each other, and the flower rain sank into the void. The dense net returned to the morning light. At this moment, the void arose, and a huge invisible sword suddenly stabbed towards Lan Lui. Blue Luo Yi was shocked and hurriedly retreated. The sword's intent was unparalleled. Even though she used all her skills, she was still shocked to take a few dozen steps back, crying blood in her mouth. One sword had already injured her heart and veins. Yu Tianqing let out a slight sigh, but in the end, he was still a bit short. Her face was as pale as paper, and her slender body it is already on the verge of collapse. TSK TSK TSK. A mocking voice came from far to near, from top to bottom. It's not as good as it was to have arrived earlier. What did I see? The sword's intent was profound, and I didn't expect such a talented and stunning person to exist in the mortal world. The roof is covered in green tiles, and two tall figures stand on it. A person in luxurious attire, holding a folding fan in hand, seemed to shake rather than shake, showing a carefree and unrestrained demeanor. The other person was holding a long sword, with a calm and unobstructed gaze, seemingly silent but unable to conceal their extraordinary charm. Baiyun Shen, do you think her sword is stronger, or your sword is stronger? The man holding the sword said, her pulse is damaged, and she is not strong enough to win. TSK Tisk. The man in brocade seemed to have heard some terrible joke and chuckled a few times. Listen. What did I hear? I actually said, victory is not martial. Have you ever thought about the feelings of those people wearing blue clothes? Seemingly joking, but actually mocking, everyone in the Blue Jade Gate was instantly angry. Bully the little with the more, and bully the others with the power. Since you are a righteous person, of course you dare to take action. The other party's words were insinuating, and Lan Lui couldn't bear to be humiliated, but she was already injured and didn't dare to act rashly. She could only suppress her anger and ask, the Blue Jade Gate of the 7 schools is operating here. Who is the one who dares to ask? The man in brocade chuckled and said, we are just wandering through the outer regions, not comparable to the reputation of the Blue Jade Gate. If that's the case, don't meddle in your affairs. That's not possible. The man in brocade pointed to the man holding a sword and said, my brother loves to meddle in his own business. He has to take care of everything he does. As soon as the words fell, the long sword in the man's hand was gone. A burst of sword energy shook, and the disciples of the Blue Jade Sect couldn't stand, forcing them to retreat several zhang. At the place where everyone was originally standing, there was a long sword as black as obsidian, standing in the air like 1,000 pounds pressing down on the top. Lan Lui knew that this trip was difficult to achieve and that entanglement was a loss. I had to take a resentful look at the 2 men on the roof, then quickly leave with my disciples. Seeing them leave, Dao Xuanzi couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and sat down on the threshold. The feeling of being reborn after the disaster made him unable to help but howl and cry. The red sun rises in the east, and the golden light shines everywhere. Yu Tianqing is bathed in the sunshine, enveloped in warmth that makes her unable to help but feel dazed. Accompanied by the exclamation of others, her thin body floats down like a kite, just like a pair of strong arms. The sunlight reflects on the 3-dimensional facial features of the other person, with starry eyes and exceptionally bright. A scorching stream of true qi is continuously entering from the back, and the strong power of true elements automatically repairs the meridians in Yu Tianqing's body. The warmth gradually rose within her body, and the comfort made her fall asleep in the other person's arms. The mountain breeze is refreshing, and the sky is clear and clear. Deep mountain heritage, can't do without the world of mortals, but cannot do without human hearts. Oh, Baiyun Shen, I've never seen you so devoted to any woman before. Xiang Shuihai curled her lips and looked at the man holding the sword with a smile on her face. Baiyun gave him a deep glance and said lightly, isn't this exactly what you want to see? Oh. Your purpose of coming today is to protect the Taoist sect, isn't it? Although Taoist sect is declining, it is still the ancestral home of the Taoist sect and its prestige remains. Even if the Taoist world is unified in the future, without the addition of Taoist sect, it will be difficult for the Taoist sect to unite as one. The more chaotic the Taoist world is, the more beneficial it is for the demon sect. Isn't that what you want to see? Xiang Shuihai smiled and said, "Those who know me, the clouds are deep. So what do you want me to do this time?" Xiang Shuihai's eyes were filled with joy, and it was effortless to talk to smart people. "Stay and find that Jade Bone Relic," she said. A hint of surprise flashed in Baiyun Shen's eyes. "Do you also believe that the Jade Bone Relic really exists?" "Of course." Xiang Shuihai shook his folding fan and said, "The ancient books of our demon sect clearly record the scene when the Taoist ancestor ascended, as well as the process of condensing relics in his physical body. Can what our demon sect founder saw with his own eyes be false? That means what Dao Xuanzi said is not true." "Not necessarily." Xiang Shuelua shook her folding fan. "I'm afraid even he doesn't know where the relics are." "So where did I start looking for it?" Xiang Shuihai said, "Although the Blue Jade Gate has left, there are still 7 sects behind, and they will not stop there. If Dao Xuanzi knows the whereabouts of the relics, he will definitely have some traces to show. If he really doesn't know, you must also protect the Dao Zhenzong for me." Baiyun Shen naturally knew his meaning. If the Taoist sect existed for a day, the 7 sects would not dare to be too ostentatious. As long as there was no great unity in the righteous path, the demon sect would naturally have one less threat. Now that Dao Xuanzi and others have all been injured, with only the 3 of them, they are not opponents of the 7 schools. If you stay here, they will definitely not refuse. Xiang Shuihai clenched his fists and bowed, "I will work hard on this matter, Brother Yun Shen. If I can really find that Jade Bone Relic, it will also benefit me. However, I still need one more thing," said Baiyun Shen, pushing away the humble gift. "What is it?" "Fulling pill." Xiang Shuihai hesitated slightly and then smiled, unexpectedly. Brother Yun Shen is also someone who cherishes fragrance and jade. On his face, which had always remained calm, an unnatural expression flashed unexpectedly. He coughed lightly and said, "That girl forcibly used the Dao realm, damaging the innate true element. If she didn't apply the spiritual medicine, she might fall into a dark injury." Xiangsuihai only said, "The fulling pill can make bones and flesh wither, and the cold ash burn even more. The pharmacist only managed to refine 3 of them back then, which can be said to be a rare treasure." Baiyun Shen naturally knew its preciousness, but her tone persisted, "I owe you a favor." "Alas, Yunshen, don't you think I'm willing to give up just 1 pill? With your temperament, how could you ever be like this?" Xiang Shuihai took out a black porcelain medicine bottle from her arms. "Although it's incredibly precious, I would be very willing to achieve a good story if it could be accomplished." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Dao entering the true sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Dao entering the true sect. Sandalwood fragrance is faint and silent. After taking the fulling pill, Yu Tianqing closed his eyes and adjusted his breath. The fulling pill is truly a spiritual medicine in the world, but in the blink of an eye, a scorching qi slowly rises from the dantian, spreading throughout the entire universe, warming and nourishing the meridians. The body feels warm, the spirit is like bathing in holy light, and the sky is clear and the mind is calm. In the fields of 8 consciousnesses, the scenery of the past leaps before my eyes. The sea of clouds rolled and the waves and clouds were eerie, and a figure resolutely jumped into it. Yu Tianqing's body couldn't help but tremble slightly as she sat cross, and the feeling in the sea of clouds is still unforgettable to her. Blood and bones seemed to be being chopped and stirred, and pain was the only sensation. The division and detachment of the soul seemed to completely crush and erase her divine consciousness. Not knowing how long had passed, the pain had numbed her, and she was almost about to think that this was the only world when a deep voice rang out in her mind. What else can you rely on when the body returns to the void and everything doesn't actually exist? The sound is like a distant bell, knocking on the door of the heart. Yu Tianqing suddenly regained his senses and blurted out, sword. In an instant, strong thoughts filled everything. The sword's intent permeated, and the invisible sword instantly split open the sea of clouds, cutting through the realm of the path of death for her. Yu Tianqing suddenly opened his eyes. The long sword trembles, its meaning resounds. Beyond the sword body, there is an invisible sword energy that permeates through heaven and earth. Yu Tianqing's mind moved slightly, and the sword intent followed. Qi broke through the door of the house and flew into the sky. The sword roars in the 9 heavens, moving the sun and moon, and moving the 10 directions to sway the universe. At this moment, she is truly embracing the unity of the heart and sword. I have truly digested the words of that mysterious person. Baiyun Shen stood in the distance, silently watching the woman under the light. She was graceful and beautiful, and her Taoist skills were unparalleled for generations. She has a cold and ethereal temperament, as if she were a heavenly maiden descending to earth, rare in the world. For a moment, he was stunned. The sun in the west has not yet fully set, and the golden aura is strong. The dusk mist is pouring onto the statue of the Taoist ancestor, like a surge of spiritual light, like a real person. Yu Tianqing stood quietly in front of him, lost in thought. I don't know how long it took, but Dao Xuanzi broke the peace and said, "Miss Yu, do you know our ancestor?" Yu Tianqing stared at the Taoist statue for a long time before nodding sincerely, "Not bad, I've seen him before." Although Dao Xuanzi was clear in his heart, he couldn't conceal his surprise when he heard her affirmation like this. To be honest, if he dares to believe this, no one will believe anyone who hears it. Dao Zhenzong, the founder of Taoism, was already a person from 1,000 years ago. The young lady in front of me, Yu, is only 2 or 8 years old. How did you get to know each other? Don't you believe it? Dao Xuanzi quickly waved his hand and said, "No, I believe it." Yu Tianqing smiled instead and said, "Why do you believe it?" Dao Xuanzi pointed to the sword in her hand and said, "Because of this sword. This is the sword of Shizu. Our sect's leaders throughout history have left wills instructing future disciples to wait for someone who comes with a sword," he said solemnly as he looked at Yu Tianqing. "And this person is the messenger of the Daoist ancestor, who will come with the Daoist ancestor's sword." Yu Tianqing looked at the sword in his hand, and yes, it was originally Dao Zhenzong's sword. No wonder Dao Xuanzi believed it deeply. She caressed the long sword, which was as transparent as jade, with a sigh, and said, "This sword was originally from your sect. Let me return it to its original owner." She respectfully presented it with both hands. "Miss, I misunderstood. I'm not here to ask for a sword. And since this sword was gifted to you by our ancestors, it's yours," said Dao Xuanzi. "I don't need a sword in my sect. It's useless for you to give it to me." "Ha! Since you don't use a sword, why does this Taoist carry this sword with you?" Dao Xuanzi touched his grayish goatee and said, "Our sect prioritizes the Tao and never uses a sword. However, this sword is indeed from our ancestors. Our ancestors gifted it to you, and I believe it has a deeper meaning. However, this is too absurd to say. Please don't speak openly to anyone else, miss." Yu Tianqing nodded. She was born again, so it was unbelievable that she could not speak to anyone. Dao Xuanzi asked again, "Excuse me, miss, did the ancestor leave any words?" Yu Tianqing pondered slightly, remembering that day when Dao Zhen gave her a sword. It was under the glass tree. Dao Zhenzi's long robe and wooden hairpin are simple and elegant. "Why did you come?" "Coming for the way." "What is the Tao?" "I don't know, that's why I came." Dao Zhenzi sighed and said, "How can empty flowers seek fruits at the same time?" How can Yang Yen search for fish more? Yu Tianqing couldn't understand. Dao Zhenzong didn't explain, but handed her a long sword and said, I've given it to you. The jade color of the long sword was invisible, with a hidden green light shining brightly. Yu Tianqing loved it in his heart and took it. Dao Zhenzong walked away with his hands down, his posture carefree, and he could only listen to him chanting and singing, with a heart of seeking, seeking fruits without seeking, what a thing. Upon hearing this, Dao Xuanzi sighed and sighed, with the heart of seeking, seeking the fruit of not seeking. The true meaning of our ancestors' teachings is extraordinary and beyond calculation. Master Dao, can't you also take a detailed look? Dao Xuanzi shook his head and said, such a realm is beyond my ordinary abilities. I am ashamed. If you don't know, who else can know? Yu Tianqing spoke for a moment, as if endless troubles were on his mind. Dao Xuanzi said, Miss Yu, don't be impatient. Understanding the Tao requires seasonal factors and fate. When the factors arrive, everything will be natural. He chuckled and said, since our ancestor left a message for you, it shows that you have a deep fortune. With time, we will surely know. He said again, it's already late today, and your body has just recovered. Don't worry, why don't you rest first? Yu Tianqing knew he was comforting, but what she said was true and sincere. She thanked him and let it go. Dao Xuanzi looked at the other person's departing figure, stroking his beard and pondering. The next morning, when Yu Tianqing pushed the door open, Dao Xuanzi was already dressed in a robe, wearing a headband, and standing solemnly outside the house. Yu Tianqing was surprised and said, Master Dao, what does this mean? Dao Xuanzi said, Miss Yu, please come with me. The white pagoda on the back mountain enshrines the spirits of the ancestors of the Taoist sect throughout history, perhaps under the protection of ancestors. Those who come to search the mountain have never destroyed this place. The room is bright and the lights are always on. Dao Xuanzi solemnly prayed for incense, and then invited Yu Tianqing to offer incense to his master. Yu Tianqing also followed suit one by one. Subsequently, Dao Xianzi took out a roll of bamboo slips from under the dark grid of the Lingtai. The bamboo slips are dark yellow in color, and I think they have been around for quite some time. Miss Yu, you spare no effort to protect our Taoist sect, and even if you have worshipped our ancestors today, even if you are a member of our sect, this Taoist scripture was left by our ancestors. If you take it to see now, it will not be considered a theft method. The teachings of the sect are not easily imparted to outsiders, and Dao Xuanzi knows her wishes. Therefore, he brought her to offer incense and offer sacrifices. Yu Tianqing felt the profound meaning and bowed deeply to him. Thank you very much, Master. Dao Xuanzi smiled and said, the meaning of the Supreme Tao is very profound. If a girl can understand one or two, it would be a blessing for our sect. He also said, there are countless Taoist methods in the world, and those who study them to the extreme are all masters of a generation. However, only with the meaning of the Tao can one break through the world and become a saint. Yu Tianqing bowed and said, I will be taught. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Leaving the mountains and entering the red dust. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Leaving the mountains and entering the red dust. Time flies in the dust, amidst the mountain breeze and fallen leaves, sitting and watching the white clouds rise, I do not know whether to worry or not. The Taoist sect was originally located in the deep valleys of the secluded mountains, with few human traces, and was pure and comfortable. Yu Tianqing enjoys daily contemplation of the Tao and practicing swordsmanship, which is quite enjoyable. Baiyun Shen, on the grounds of sparring swordsmanship with Yu Tianqing, also stayed in the Taoist sect. The rising sun is in the sky, and the rosy glow fills the sky. By the mountain stream and water, two figures entwined. One person, one sword, dragon and phoenix postures, stunningly transforming this dilapidated place into a particularly charming and romantic one. The white clouds and deep swords have deep meanings, open and close, and are as stable as Mount Tai. Yu Tianqing is elegant and free-spirited, his sword is like a startled swan, and he is as graceful as a wandering dragon. The two of them can be described as evenly matched, and both of them are determined and outstanding individuals. After a series of moves, they always feel unsatisfied. Just like this, they practice daily for more than a few months without feeling tired. After finishing the sword, they looked at each other and smiled. Seeing her face blooming like hibiscus, her forehead sweating profusely, Baiyun Shen involuntarily walked forward and wiped the sweat with her sleeve. A strong male scent instantly captured Yu Tianqing's breath. No man had ever approached like this before, and she felt a bit confused for a moment. Cough. Cough. Two unexpected coughs interrupted their movements. The one who came was Dao Zhenzong, who touched his beard and sang with a smile. Baiyun Shen awkwardly separated from Yu Tianqing. Master Dao, are you looking for me for something? Usually, Dao Zhenzong would not disturb Yu Tianqing's sword practice. He appears at this moment and seems to have something to do. Not bad. Dao Zhenzong took out a gilded invitation from his wide sleeve, with the 4 big characters of dragon flying and phoenix dancing written on it. The way travels the world. The Dao Xing Tian Xia is a conference jointly organized by the cultivators community, aimed at gathering outstanding cultivators and talents from all over the world. Anyone who receives this invitation can participate in the competition 1 month later. Baiyun Shen said, as far as I know, Dao Zhenzong has never participated in the Daoist Dharma competition in all dynasties. Not bad. Dao Zhenzong said, our sect's ancestors throughout history have only focused on understanding the Tao and do not attach great importance to Taoism. But I was fortunate enough to have participated once when I was young. Looking back, Dao Zhenzong couldn't help but sigh and slowly said, back then, I boasted that I had achieved my goal and secretly went down the mountain to practice without my master's knowledge. I met a senior brother from the Tianqi Sect who used the 7-damage fist to defeat me. I knew that if he used his last punch, he would be seriously injured and difficult to cure. At that moment, I hesitated, but I still took action against him. What was the result? Yu Tianqing asked. Dao Zhenzong said, I defeated my opponent, but he was unconscious due to serious injuries. Although he managed to save his life in the end, his cultivation has dissipated. Yu Tianqing sighed and said, anything can happen on the test field. Since he chose it himself, there's nothing to complain about. Dao Zhenzong sighed lightly and said, if I were willing to stop and admit defeat, how could his cultivation be completely scattered? For practitioners, cultivation is more precious than life, and I dare not think about how he will face the future. Baiyun Shen said, although you have a kind heart, the competition is just to compete for superiority. Even if you step back, the other party may not be willing to let go. Moreover, the power of the 7-damage fist cannot be underestimated. If you really think of benevolence, you may be the one who gets hurt. Dao Zhenzong said, my intention is not to discuss the outcome. What I want to say is our initiation, what do we care about in the present moment? Yu Tianqing looked puzzled and said, Master, I don't quite understand what you're saying. Closed-door meditation ultimately leads to withered trees without spring. Only by experiencing the realm and refining one's mind can one truly comprehend the meaning of the Tao. Yu Tianqing suddenly realized, so, the leader wants me to participate in the Taoist competition. Exactly. However, before that, it is necessary for Miss Yu to participate in the local selection meeting. Choosing English. Dao Zhenzong chuckled and said, Miss Yu is not aware of this. In recent decades, the Purple Star sect has controlled the local Taoist sect, and every time there is a Taoist ceremony, a selection association will be set up in the local area. Only the top 3 members of the selection association are qualified to participate in the Dao Xing Tian Xia ceremony. So, what the leader means is, I still need to win the ranking of the selection society, right? Dao Xuanzi shook his head and said, not really. Yu Tianqing couldn't understand. Dao Xuanzi extended a finger and smiled, it's the top pick. At the foot of the mountain, Tianqi City. Whipping silk and hat shadows, the scenery is lively. Although the Choying Society is just a corner, there are still countless cultivators who come, each with a proud and energetic demeanor. If a famous cultivator passes by, there will immediately be a sound of envy. Yu Tianqing was originally an extremely quiet person and was not accustomed to appearing in crowded situations. She silently followed behind the master and disciple of Dao Xuanzi. It was Jiang Feng's first time visiting the Yinghui, and he was overjoyed and dancing all the way. Sister Yu, look, there are still people who can breathe fire. Following the guidance of the river breeze, some martial artists had already set up stalls by the roadside, beating gongs and drums, shouting, those who have money should hold a money market, while those who don't have money should hold a personal market. It's not very lively. Although Yu Tianqing knew he was cheating, he also found it interesting. When there were too many people to watch, they crowded and jostled each other. Yu Tianqing never liked to get close to others, and when he retreated, he landed on a thick chest. It was originally Baiyun Shen who was right behind her, silently watching her. He raised his arm to protect her and led her away from the crowd. Yu Tianqing whispered, thank you. Baiyun smiled silently, but after half a month, the two seemed to have a considerable understanding. Move aside. Move aside everyone. A few fast horses galloped towards us, only to see pedestrians flying and colliding with each other, and the vendors on both sides fell to the ground one by one. Shouts and screams kept coming one after another, mixed up in a state of confusion. Be careful, Baiyun Shen suddenly shouted. I saw a whip shadow coming towards Yu Tianqing. The white clouds were deep, with sharp eyes and quick hands. With one hand, they swept over the jade sky, while the other touched the ground and drifted away in an instant. Ha! With a soft doubt, a pair of seductive eyes rushed past the two of them. Most of the pedestrians on the road are cultivators. If they were ordinary riders, they would have been subdued by others. The people who passed by just now were using their true qi to resist the whip, and the whole group of people flipped their horses, not daring. Oh my goodness, the woman who just led the way is the leader and disciple of the Green Willow sect, isn't she? I don't know, how could the Purple Star sect selection meeting still disturb the fourth-ranked Green Willow sect among the 7 sections? Mind him, there's a good show to watch now. Jiang Feng listened to the discussions of the passers-by and couldn't help but ask, Master, isn't the Green Willow Gate in Jiangnan, thousands of miles away? Why are you still here in our desert? Are you here for us? Dao Xuanzi stroked his beard and said, as soon as you come, please calm down and observe the changes. Jiang Feng chuckled and said, we have sister Yu and brother Bai. I think anyone who comes will beat them down. The dog raised its tail. Dao Xuanzi slapped him on the back of the head, speak less, don't be too busy. I'm telling the truth, Jiang Feng rubbed his head and said defiantly to Dao Xuanzi, I'm a dog with a raised tail. You're not wearing a silver bell in your dog's ear. Otherwise, why would Sister Yu come to participate in this selection meeting? Hey! I said you little brat, you haven't knocked on the house and exposed the tiles for 3 days, have you? Dao Xuanzi picked up his brush and hit Jiang Feng. One teacher and one apprentice started playing around on the street. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Newcomers to the English Society. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Newcomers to the English Society. Although it is a frontier, there are countless people who are eager to take the stage and show their heroic spirit. Everyone wants to show their skills. On a platform several meters high, there is a huge stone-carved 4-legged tripod incense burner placed in the middle, and next to it stands a tall and muscular man, shirtless, revealing his lean flesh. He looked ahead and took a deep breath of true qi, his voice sounding like a bell. Please, Master Chiu, he said outside the high platform. In the center, there are 3 rosewood chairs placed. A short and chubby old man, leaning on a carved dragon cane, slowly walked up the stage and sat in the middle position. The old man is the leader of the Purple Star sect, the Autumn Rain Tower. Standing behind him was Chiu Luoying, who had recently clashed. The strong man shouted again, please invite the head of the Blue Jade sect, Blue Luo Yi. As a younger generation, Lan Loi sat on the right side of the old man. But the position on the left side is still empty. The strong man looked at the Autumn Rain Tower and saw that it nodded. He turned around and let out a long chant, the gathering of heroes has officially begun. The sound of drums is like thunder, inspiring the hearts of the flock of birds. The heroes who were named all leaped up, practiced for many years, and competed with each other. Yu Tianqing and others watched under the stage for a while, and then they had a clear idea. After all, they were all small and scattered sects, without any advanced cultivation methods, so naturally there would be no super high Taoist techniques. Yu Tianqing only waited until the end of the competition before taking the stage and defeating the best one by one. At some point, a woman wearing a green gauze skirt sat on the left side of the Autumn Rain Tower, her face covered, leaving only a pair of eyes full of autumn water. Although I couldn't see her expression, the charm and brilliance contained in these eyes were enough to make people dizzy and mesmerized. She turned around and said something to the Autumn Rain Tower, but everyone on the stage looked at Yu Tianqing and others together. Several beams of bright light shone like a spotlight, landing on the 4 of them, forcefully taking away the light from the crowd under the blue sky and white sun. The strong man who signed up next to the cauldron looked at them, raised his voice, and shouted, please invite the leader of Dao Sect to come on stage. As soon as this sentence was spoken, the whole room fell silent. Everyone followed the strong man's gaze and turned to Yu Tianqing and others. The name of Dao Sect is well known to everyone, but it is particularly surprising to mention it at this moment. Dao Xuanzi was not surprised or panicked, but instead smiled and shook the dust, bowing to everyone. Don't stand foolishly. There is tea and fruit on top, why don't you go up and rest? He led the 3 of them onto the stage, and next to the 3 purple sandalwood chairs, he had already added another one. Although Chiu Tower is much younger than Dao Xuanzi, its hair is gray and its face is haggard. It looks much older than Dao Xuanzi. After a brief conversation with Dao Xuanzi, he stopped speaking, and Lan Loi was not as nervous as before. His delicate face had a hint of politeness. If it weren't for the somewhat unattractive appearance on Autumn Falling Ying's face, everyone would almost have thought that the confrontation a few days ago seemed non-existent. Only Green Chi, dressed in green clothes, kept talking with a smile in her eyes. Originally, this girl is a friend of the Taoist sect. She had a collision before. Please don't take it amiss, girl. Her voice is soft, and her eyes are extremely beautiful. The slightly upturned corners of her eyes make her smile, which is truly heart-wrenching. Even as a woman, Yu Tianqing couldn't help but add a touch of tenderness to her. It's okay, Yu Tianqing said gently. Is this young master also a disciple of the Taoist sect? With a dignified demeanor, said LV Chier with a brilliant expression. Baiyun Shen smiled slightly and said, I am just a wandering cultivator who has traveled around the world. I dare not pretend to be a descendant of the Taoist ancestor. This time, I am accompanying Miss Yu to attend the gathering of heroes, and I will also catch a glimpse of the charm of the world's heroes. LV Chier covered her mouth and smiled, if you want to witness the beauty of the world's heroes, I think you're going to the Daoxing Tian Xia conference. Of course, wouldn't it be a pity to miss such a grand event? Baiyun Shen clasped his fists and smiled. Do you also want to give it a try, young Master Bai? It's not me, but Miss Yu. Oh. Green Chier's eyes were full of excitement. Since Miss Yu is a disciple of the Taoist sect, she naturally has the qualifications. Seeing that the heroes on the field had already engaged in more than half of the battle, Yu Tianqing stood up and said, we have to compete before we know if we really qualify. Lan Lui looked surprised and said, are you going to compete with them? With the skills of Yu Tianqing, she and Qiu Luoying have both experienced it. How can anyone compare to them in this arena? Qiu Luoying snorted coldly, what if you win here? During the Daoxing Tianxia conference, not only will the 7 sects participate, but countless heroes from all over the world will also participate. If you win the crowd at that time, you will be considered capable. The two of them only thought that Yu Tianqing was going to make a name for themselves, and their faces showed a hint of strange energy. Yu Tianqing saw that they were strange, but she didn't know why. She had always been open-minded and didn't take it seriously. Green Chier's eyes flickered and she chuckled, Miss Yu has excellent Taoist skills. I have heard of her before. Why bother to trouble those ordinary people? She gave a few orders to the maid behind her, and after a while, a few members of the Green Willow sect escorted a polite man out. The man was around 30, with a slightly stagnant expression. His originally handsome face was now filled with wind, frost, and sorrow. He heard the clanking of metal again, and saw his hands and feet tied with iron chains, stumbling every step he took. This clean and gentle person, however, was wearing an iron chain that seemed to be heinous, which was heart-wrenching. Ha! Isn't this Peng Zemu, the divine knife young master of Jiangnan Divine Knife Villa? How could such a charming young master be tied up like a beast? I heard that the divine knife young master killed the other man's husband for the sake of a woman. TSK. I really can't tell. Shendao Gongzi Peng Zemu seemed to turn a deaf ear, and his lowered eyes seemed to conceal endless worries. LV Chier pointed at him with a smile and said to Yu Tianqing, this is the young master of the Jiangnan Divine Sword Sect, Peng Zemu. He became famous at the age of 15 and comprehended the Tao at the age of 20. He is 8 out of 20 this year, and it is said that the Tao has already achieved some success. Among the young generation in Jiangnan, there are few comparable ones. If he were to compete with Miss Yu, I believe she would also be satisfied. She patted her hands lightly, and the gatekeeper immediately untied Peng Zemu's iron chain. However, this former nobleman stood there like a wooden man, with no change in his expression. With a smile on her face, LV Chier walked up to him and whispered a few words. Peng Zemu's body trembled like thunder, and his originally dark eyes instantly lit up, terrifyingly bright. A disciple presented his sword in front of him, which was a large sword about 7 feet long, with an ancient and elegant blade. Peng Zemu took the sword and in an instant, swung it sideways towards Yu Tianqing. Yu Tianqing leaped and landed on the high platform. Prince Shendao Peng Zemu followed behind and also went to Taichung. A few gentle words made a person who looked like a withered wood instantly revive. Baiyun Shen suddenly asked, I don't know what green girl said to the divine sword young master, which can make him recover. LV Chier looked at Baiyun Shen with a smile in her eyes, as if with affection. It's nothing, I just told him that her crush is pregnant with his child and lives in the villa of the Purple Star Gate. If he wins, I can allow him to see her. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Top of the English Talent Selection Association. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Top of the English Talent Selection Association. The long sword is wide and wide, with a strong and powerful spirit. Peng Zemu waved his hands, and a large knife, like an airtight net, swung wildly towards Yu Tianqing. The dragon chants out of its sheath, and the blue long sword involuntarily soars to protect its owner. Heart-sword unity. LV Chier couldn't help but exclaim, Miss Yu is truly a disciple of the Dao Zhenzong. Lui, you are not unjustified for losing to her. Lan Lui bit her lips but didn't answer, and everyone's eyes focused on the two people on the high platform. The blade's shadow flickers like an endless tide, suppressing layer by layer. Yu Tianqing's sword energy is immense, always within reach, weighing 1,000 pounds in 4 or 2, dispelling crises. The two swords swung towards each other, making the audience tremble with fear. Peng Zemu suddenly withdrew his sword and stood still. The flying sword returned, and Yu Tianqing stood still in opposition. The sword technique of our Shindao villa is said to have been created by our ancestors during their divine journey to Taishu. The Dao meaning is profound and incomparable to ordinary Dao techniques. Yu Tianqing nodded and said, "Indeed, it is extraordinary." Peng Zemu said again, "I have been following my elders since I was young, honing my skills in the difficult border areas of the demon tribe. My sword is filled with a murderous aura." "That's true." Peng Zemu sighed and said, "If it weren't for my reasons to win, I wouldn't have fought a little girl like you." "I know." Yu Tianqing looked at the other person with eyes that were supposed to be full of moon and stars, but at this moment, these eyes were divine and colorless. The inner world behind those eyes should be so helpless and cold. Just like his knife, heavy yet deadly. "My sword is called Breaking Army," Peng Zemu said coldly. "Miss, be careful. He is majestic and resounding." Yu Tianqing wanted to respond to something, but opened his mouth and didn't say anything. She hasn't named her sword yet, and it seems that she has lost a bit in terms of momentum. Thinking about it, she couldn't help but smile in her heart. After it's over, she will definitely give her sword a loud name. The oppressive atmosphere that was approaching seemed to instantly relax a lot. Miss Yu not only possesses superb Taoist techniques, but also has an open-minded mindset. At such a critical moment, she can still smile and pay it off, which is truly admirable, said LV Chier with a smile. Baiyun looked deeply at the people on stage, dressed in plain clothes, a simple jade hairpin, and holding a simple bun. However, it could not conceal the elegance emanating from her whole body. She held a sword gracefully, danced in her long robe, and had a graceful demeanor with every move, as if she had infinite charm. "She's always amazing," Baiyun murmured to herself. One blade after another, Peng Zemu's blade posture seemed to be very slow, but the thick air was more than one layer until he approached Yu Tianqing. The heavy and condensed atmosphere was like a mountain towering over the whole audience. Even those watching from the stage felt as if it was dusk and dark, and it was hard to breathe. "The Qianquan wind and cloud blade," exclaimed a knowledgeable person below, Peng Zemu's famous move. Everyone knows that this move is the difference between victory and defeat. Yu Tianqing closed his eyes. Everyone exclaimed, "Is she going to give up?" However, the arena only has wins and losses, without mercy. A sword suddenly shone, breaking through the sky. All the haze is swept away in this sword. While everyone was still unaware, Yu Tianqing's sword had already pressed against Peng Zemu's chest, and the sword wind had fallen, leaving him with a short and heroic spirit. The people on the stand stood up one after another. The people under the stands opened their mouths wide, all unbelievable. Even Peng Zemu himself seemed a bit stunned. "Your sword has a murderous aura, but your heart has no murderous aura." Yu Tianqing's words broke through. Peng Zemu gave a bitter smile and said, "Not bad, the girl has a great way of thinking." "I lost." Yu Tianqing said, "It seems like you lost, but in reality you won." "Oh." Peng Zemu said, "I don't know what the girl means." "You lost the competition, but you won yourself." Yu Tianqing respectfully said, "With just one thought of benevolence, the sword hesitated, so you lost to me. But even if others forced you to this point, you still did not lose your original intention, so you defeated yourself. You are a hero." Peng Zemu laughed heartily and said, "I became famous at a young age and was proud of the world. I have heard many praises from people, but your heroic words today are the most pleasing." He clenched his fists and said, "Thank you very much." The shackles covered his body again, but he showed no signs of anything unusual. He was willing to surrender, as if the weight of 1,000 gold coins was just ordinary. Perhaps to others, this is simply humiliation and bullying, but to him, every step is calm. The most important thing is his love for her. All kinds of embarrassment cannot erase the light in one's heart. Yu Tianqing's gaze was long and thoughtful. 3 gongs sounded, and no one came on stage to take the exam. The top scorer of this selection event is undoubtedly Yu Tianqing. Qiu Luoying reluctantly handed her the top prize. A large red flower woven from silk fabric, and a plate of 50 ingots of patterned silver. Yu Tianqing had no idea about these things and looked at the object in front of him with some confusion. Autumn falling leaves are a bit impatient. At this moment, Dao Xuanzi took the silver pattern and followed closely with Jiang Feng to take the red flower. Oh my, sister Yu doesn't like vulgar things, let me wear them for her. Jiang Feng hung the big red flower on himself, straightened his chest, and grinned his mouth, feeling very imposing. Dao Xuanzi wrapped the silver pattern around it and smiled as he put it into his pocket. The Purple Star sect is so polite, but the old Taoist is disrespectful, he said. Autumn falling leaves gave them a white glance. Dao Xuanzi turned a blind eye and chuckled, old Taoist and others, will take the road back to the mansion. LV Chier smiled and said, are you leaving now? I want to have more close communication with Miss Yu. Why don't you all stay in this city for a few more days? Dao Xuanzi touched his long beard and pretended to hesitate, saying, how could I be so embarrassed to let you spend money? With a smile in her eyes, Green Cheer looked at autumn falling leaves, which goes without saying. I can still afford to raise a few more people from my Purple Star sect to eat, said Qiu Luoying with a stern expression. Dao Xuanzi suddenly smiled and said, that old Taoist, it's better to be respectful than obedient. The Purple Star sect members led Yu Tianqing and his 4 companions to their respective rooms. Along the way, there are rockeries and corridors, small bridges and flowing water, creating a scene of wealth and prosperity. Jiang Feng followed alone at the end, bowing his head and remaining silent, looking like a completely different person from his previous lively appearance. Even when they arrived at the room, they stood at the door in anger and refused to enter. Dao Xuanzi patted the back of his head and said, little rabbit, who can I show you a dead face? Jiang Feng sat on the ground, motionless. What are you doing? You don't want to stay in such a good room. Jiang Feng said, whoever loves to live, who lives? Oh, you even kicked your nose on your face. Jiang Feng's eyes turned slightly red and he said, a few days ago, they were going to strip us of our pants. Today, we will accept their charity, it's spineless. Dao Xuanzi angrily picked up the dust and wanted to hit him, raised it high, and then gently lowered it. He sighed and sat next to Jiang Feng, saying, child, you should know that in the martial arts world, one must learn to make peace. I don't make peace with bad people. Dao Xuanzi chuckled and affectionately touched his head, it's not about making peace with bad people, but about making peace with oneself. The river wind is incomprehensible. Remember that hatred doesn't make us happy, so we need to make peace with it, so that we will always be happy. At the age of 14 or 15, Jiang Feng was still difficult to understand at the moment. In his view, defeating bad people is the most deeply ingrained joy in people's hearts. Baiyun patted his shoulder deeply and said, are you afraid of them? Of course not. Since you're not afraid of them, are you still afraid of staying in their room? Nature is also not afraid. That's right, we need to live comfortably in the villain's house. Jiang Feng clapped his hands and said, yes, yes, not only do we need to live, but we also need to live happily. What can they do for me? Baiyun Shen chuckled and led him into the room. Yu Tianqing also smiled slightly. It turned out that the friendship between boys was so simple. Dao Xuanzi, who stayed behind alone, shook his head and muttered softly, I don't know how expensive the firewood and rice are without being in charge. Without these 50 taels of silver patterns, where would I come from? Yu Tianqing suddenly stood up and turned around to smile at him, with a hint of mischief on his face. Master, the reason why you made me insist on winning the first prize is because of these 50 taels, right? Ah, that. This. Dao Xuanzi awkwardly coughed a few times, touched his head, and stroked his beard, as if expressing both emotion and emotion. Oh, this room looks pretty good. Ha. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Peng Zemu saves his wife. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Peng Zemu saves his wife. Rain falls on the green mountains, with thousands of peaks and beautiful scenery. Smoke cages and clear water flow through thousands of valleys. Climbing tall buildings on the horizon, the tallest building in the city of Tianqing. According to legend, after being intoxicated, the founder of Taoism, Dao Zhenzong, revealed a miracle here and soared freely. Yu Tianqing stood on the rooftop, overlooking the entire city. People are like ants, bustling and bustling, with a vast and boundless expanse of jade. From this perspective, the insignificance of humanity and the grandeur of the universe are particularly distinct. What are you looking at? Baiyun Shen asked. Yu Tianqing smiled slightly and said, I'm thinking, this world is really interesting. Oh. What's so interesting about it? Look at them, everyone is busy with their own affairs, while in the forest, every bird and beast is busy with their own nest, as well as the vast outer realm at the end, and the immortal palace above the clouds. Which one is not busy, circling around them? You're right, Baiyun said deeply. All the disputes in the world are none other than me. Yes, but I didn't mean to say that. I'm all ears and ears, Baiyun said as she looked at her profile, pure and flawless. I just feel that what everyone sees in their eyes is a corner of this world, although not all of it is true. Since it's not all, how can we say it's true? Because they live seriously. Indeed, to live, one must be serious, said Baiyun Shen with a faint smile. He looked at the sunset, at the end of the vast expanse, and suddenly asked, do you know about hardship? Where is that? That is the border between the Central Plains and the Demon Realm, a gray area where many cultivators who were expelled from the Central Plains can only be accepted there. What kind of place is that? That is a place where even the sun and moon are gray. Everyone's heart seems to be covered in gray, with endless worries, hatred, love and separation, unable to seek. Bitter and bitter intertwined, unable to leave. Aren't they living a very difficult life? Isn't there just a little joy in them? Yes. What is it? Death. Will this be joyful? For the vast majority of people, death means liberation, perhaps the most enjoyable thing in a life of hardship. But if we dare to have joy in the face of death, why can't we have the same joy in the face of life? Baiyun's deep gaze froze for a moment, then he burst into laughter. That's right, he said as he looked at Yu Tianqing with a blazing gaze. I knew you were always surprising. As far as his eyes could see, it seemed like he was bathed in fire all over, and Yu Tianqing unconsciously turned his face away. Baiyun's deep gaze was deep, and she wanted to say something more. In an instant, the flames surged into the sky, staining the horizon red. That's where the flames shine, familiar yet unfamiliar. It's the Purple Star Gate. The two looked at each other, then jumped out and flew away. Fireworks swirled around, thick smoke choked people. Yu Tianqing didn't take a few steps when he saw several figures flickering and suddenly approaching his side. His neck caught a cold, and he pinched the vital point of his life in someone else's hand. Don't hurt her, she's not from the 7 schools. The voice was familiar, but it turned out to be Peng Zemu. He was no longer shackled, it was obvious that the person who came was to save him. Lianer hasn't been found yet, I'll go in and find her, Peng Zemu said anxiously. But he was grabbed by another person and said, saving you has already alarmed LV Cheer. If you go in again, you really won't be able to come out again. But Lianer is still inside. Why don't we exchange her as a hostage and let Green Chi make friends, the person who held her said coldly. Peng Zemu quickly stopped and said, no, Miss Yu is innocent. How can she be involved? I can't handle so much. I think it's feasible, Yu Tianqing said unexpectedly. If it could help you save your lover, it would be a good thing. The person who buttoned his neck smiled in surprise and said, "This girl is more carefree than you." Without time to consider, LV Chier had already hurriedly arrived with her people. With a cold glance, LV Chier exclaimed coquettishly, "Peng Zemu, how dare you set fire and run away?" The man standing next to Peng Zemu suddenly sneered, "Is he a prisoner of your family? How about eloping? It's you, the Green Willow sect, who secretly withheld others, who is despicable and dirty." You. Green Chier's eyes were red with anger. "Humph, that's all, I'll let you know the power of my Green Willow Gate." A group of disciples surrounded Peng Zemu and others in groups. "Wait a minute. Miss Yu is still in their hands." Baiyun Shen suddenly appeared and stopped LV Chier. "Are you asking me to let them go?" said LV Chier with her eyes lit up at the same time. A ball of water sleeves rushed towards each other like blue waves and white waves, like a tide. Cold light suddenly appeared, and the deep white cloud sword unsheathed, shattering the blue water long sleeve with one sword. His face darkened and his voice spoke sharply, "Green Chi. Is it only your life at the Green Willow Gate that counts as life, and the lives of others are not?" LV Chier was angry and speechless. Baiyun turned around and faced Peng Zemu and others, clasping his fists in salute. Shockwave Thunder and Valdemonic Tiger, both of them are senior Taoist masters. Holding on to an innocent girl is not considered a hero, is it? Holding on to the person of Yu Tianqing, he smiled and said, "Our brothers have been withdrawing from the orthodox path of the Central Plains for decades. I didn't expect anyone else to remember our name. Little brother, please report your name." Baiyun Shen bowed to him with a clasped fist and said, "How dare I nominate a title in front of the senior foodie who? I am Baiyun Shen." Deep white clouds. Okay, I remember you." Baiyun Shen said again, "Senior Voldemort, can you let my friend go?" Voldemort said, "I have no grudge against her, so we can naturally let go." Baiyun thought deeply and quickly, "I don't know what seniors have to ask for." "Clever," the tiger chuckled, "please speak." Voldemort laughed and said, "My nephew Peng has a fiancée AE who hasn't come out yet. They both have the same fate. Today, my nephew Peng is leaving, so how can a wife not follow him? The Green Willow Gate is holding someone else's wife, beating a mandarin duck with a stick, and I'm not afraid I don't have a man to take it." In her words, it was clear that she was teasing LV Chier. LV Chier was extremely angry and laughed back, looking for death. A burst of water sleeves pierced through the air and left. The shaking tiger on the side chuckled and lightly slapped his sleeve, causing it to shatter into pieces. Baiyun was extremely angry, and he also swung his sword horizontally. LV Chier hurriedly retreated, with sword energy crisscrossing and nowhere to hide. In an instant, the Green Chier's eyes showed a look of panic. It was the sword energy that came towards her face. Ah! With a coquettish moan, Green Chi instinctively covered the veil on her face. A woman's greatest concern is her appearance. A woman who covers her face must be more concerned about the veil on her appearance. Between the lightning and fire, the deep white clouds clapped their palms horizontally. With the help of the palm wind, Green Chier took advantage of the situation and retreated, narrowly avoiding the area where the sword energy could reach. LV Chier's soul was still in shock, knowing that it was the deep palm of the white cloud that saved her from embarrassment. For a moment, my eyes were complicated and my mind was stunned. Stop it all. As the wind and clouds surged, a female voice suddenly came to an end. A graceful figure appeared in front of everyone. She had a hazy expression and a worried expression on her face. She held a dagger in her hand and pressed it against her throat. Liena. Junior sister. Peng Zemu and LV Chier both fell silent. The woman was Peng Zemu's beloved, LV Hanlian. With a sorrowful expression in her eyes, she said to LV Chier, "Senior sister, let me go with him." LV Chier dared not step forward and only said in a resentful voice, "For the sake of a man, do you really want to abandon your master and mother? Are there still us?" LV Hanlian said, "Senior sister, you have never truly loved a man, you won't understand." LV Hanlian spoke while walking backwards towards Peng Zemu. She had tears in her eyes and a sorrowful expression on her face, making anyone feel heartbroken. This LV Hanlian was originally the daughter of the leader of the Green Willow sect. She grew up with Peng Zemu as childhood sweethearts and was already a perfect match. The cooked material divine knife sect refused to be coerced by the 7 sects, so Shengxing broke her up and remarried LV Hanlian. Peng Zemu was furious and injured the groom on his wedding day, taking LV Hanlian away. Later, he was at a loss and was captured by LV Chier. LV Chier is afraid that LV Hanlian will really hurt her and cannot explain, so she dare not act rashly. In an instant, Jintian Tiger held on to LV Hanlian with one hand and Peng Zemu with the other, his true energy rising, and he said, "Let's go." The Voldemort Tiger let go of Yu Tianqing and immediately left. LV Chier looked at the 4 people who had disappeared in front of her and stomped her feet in anger. She glared angrily at Baiyun Shen and Yu Tianqing and said, "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Baiyun smiled deeply and said, "Completing others is also a matter of merit. Why not do it? Intervening in others' affairs can also be considered a pleasure." "I can't feel it, it's because your layout is too small," Baiyun Shen chuckled. End of this chapter.